Hi, this is Phil from philsolano.com. Today we're going to be looking at web hosting, what it is and why you should need it. First of all, what is web hosting? A web host is basically a powerful computer, sometimes referred to as a data center. It stores all your web pages, all your files, text and images, and it delivers these upon request to your site visitors. These visitors come along, they look at your site, and the server then serves them all the files, all the information, the text and images from your site, and it displays it on their browser. These servers have very, very large disk space, much larger than that of a normal computer, in order to be able to store all your files. And they also have what's known as a large bandwidth. I'll talk about bandwidths in a few minutes. Firstly, do you need hosting at all? It really depends on your requirements. There are many free sites available which you can use, and it doesn't cost you anything to put these sites together. Examples of such services are WordPress.com, Blogger.com, Squidoo.com, and a host of others. With these you basically create an account, and then you can start putting a blog together pretty much straight away. The only disadvantage with these are that you are a little bit restricted to what you can do with them. Also, your domain name, that's the like yoursite.com, will always have the extension of the service with it. So in other words, if you were creating a blog on gardening, for example, and you wanted to call it My Gardening Tips, it would actually read www.mygardeningtips.wordpress.com or mygardeningtips.blogger.com and so on. So in other words, it'll all have the extension of wordpress.com, blogger.com, squidoo.com and so on. It won't just have mygardeningtips.com. That's one of the disadvantages. Now, for example, the service you're using doesn't like the content of your site, they can actually pull down your site without notice. So there are restrictions by using free sites. But if you're getting started and you're very short on funds, then it is a good way to get started. You can actually put a blog up with very, very little cost. Why do you need hosting? Well, by having your own hosting, you have total control of your site content. You can also control the look and feel of your site. You can use blogs, you can use WordPress or any of these other blog type platforms, but also you can create your own site from scratch. If you're into HTML coding and you like using things like Dreamweaver or Composer, you can actually create your site completely from scratch and have it looking exactly the way you want. There are no restrictions in terms of how big you want your site to be, what you want to put on it. The only prerequisite to that will be the size of your hosting plan. Now, when you choose hosting, there are various plans. You can have an entry-level plan where the disk space and the facilities on it are quite basic, and it will be perfectly right for creating, for example, one website. As you start to add more to your sites, your hosting company may send you an email saying that you might need to upgrade your hosting plan to a larger or the next level, which will then give you more disk space and more features which you can then use. So, great way of getting started, because you can actually start with a very, very basic site, very small plan, and as your site builds you can then increase your plan to the next level and so on. What do you need to look for in hosting? I've already mentioned disk space. That's one of the very important things. Ideally you want to have as large a disk space as you want, ideally unlimited, and of course you're looking for maximum disk space versus minimum cost. You also need to look at bandwidth. So what exactly is bandwidth? Bandwidth is basically how much site traffic your host can handle at any given time. You put your website up, you can have lots of visitors coming to your site, and if the hosting company you chose had a very small bandwidth, you'd get a situation where the more visitors that come to your site, the slower it would take for your site to load up on your visitors' browsers, and that's often down to bandwidth. A very small bandwidth will cause that to happen quite early on. A much larger bandwidth, there'll be hundreds or even thousands of visitors coming on to your site before there'll be any problem. Again, so same as disk space, the larger the bandwidth, the better. You can't have too much bandwidth. And ideally, both disk space and bandwidth should be unlimited. It's also very important to have good customer support. There are situations where the hosting company may be updating their databases or doing some kind of improvement or some kind of maintenance to their servers. You go to log onto your site, you find it's not working, and of course you immediately panic, think, oh, what's happened? Why is my site not loading? And so therefore it's great to have some support where you can contact the hosting company and find out what the problem is. And a lot of them now offer this live chat, so you can literally click on the live chat, you can then type it away straight away, and you get immediate response from the hosting company and will tell you what's going on, or if they weren't aware of it, and they'll look into it straight away for you. So a decent hosting company will offer that service. Also, something to be careful about is hosting contract times. Now, when you go and see various hosting companies, they'll often refer to their fees as so much per month. For example, $5.95 per month. And you may think, great, that's it, so I can just sign up to that, and all I'm going to have to do is to pay that $5.95 a month. In fact, that's not often the case. You often have to pay in advance for a whole year. So in other words, you pay 12 months worth of hosting time. And but of course, if you were to break it down, it would actually work out to $5.95 per month. So it can be a bit of a big expense when you're first starting out, if you're having to pay a year's upfront hosting when you first get started. A lot of them have a minimum of 1 year contract, but there are a few out there which have even just say 3 months. So you only have to pay for 3 months hosting. So that helps a little bit when you're starting out. When choosing hosting, you need to decide what your hosting requirements are going to be. So are you going to be just creating a simple single site, just one website? Or are you going to be creating many sites, i.e. multiple sites? Now, it is possible to have one hosting and have many sites or multiple sites all on that one host. The way you do this is you create your hosting account, you have the one domain, so yourdomain.com, and that's your very first site. Later on, you decide you want to build some additional sites, and so you can do what's known as create add-on domains. So these domains can be completely different domains from your first one. So the first one you may have created a site on gardening. The next one you may create a site on knitting or something like that. Doesn't matter what it is. And so it's a completely different domain. And so you can add these domains to your existing hosting, and they're called add-on domains. And to do that, you need a slightly better hosting plan than the basic one. Is your site just going to be simple text and graphics? So it's just going to be like a blog, just a few articles, text graphics. In which case, again, you can get away with using maybe the entry-level hosting plan rather than a much larger one. If, of course, you're going to go for a much larger, much more powerful e-commerce type sites, now that's the sites where they have lots of pictures of products and prices with them, and these prices and products change according to the stock availability and so on. So you've got what's known as a dynamic site where the content is always changing, or you want the content to automatically change. As an example, let's say you have 10 products, somebody comes along and buys one, you want the stock level then to automatically drop down to 9, and so that's what's known as a dynamic site. As you can appreciate, the hosting for that will be much larger, much more powerful than the simple text and graphics content type site. Are you also going to be needing multiple email accounts? Rather like I mentioned at the top there, we have multiple sites. Ideally, you'd like to have an email account for each one of those sites. You're going to have one email account for your gardening site, and have another email account for your knitting site, or whatever it is. So it's important to have multiple email accounts. Again, are you going to need that? This will also mean you'll need a slightly better hosting plan than the entry-level one. And finally, you may need multiple databases where you've got constant dynamic things changing, and there may be various fields, various features, and so therefore you may need more than one database, which again, of course, will push up the hosting plan you'd require. So all these need to be taken into account before you choose your hosting. And some hosting companies are better at providing some features over others. So I'm going to recommend 2 hosting services. If you're getting started, then the hosting I would definitely recommend is HostGator.com. This is actually one I personally use. I find it to be very reliable, very flexible, great service support. My site, philsolano.com, is actually hosted on HostGator.com. I've had absolutely no problems with them. They're very good and very reliable. And if you're starting out, they have the baby plan, which lets you create just the one site, and you can always upgrade to a hatchling plan or the various other plans they do. But it's a great way to get it started out, and they've got some excellent support, and I would definitely recommend them. Another company I came across was also InMotionHosting.com. This site's more aimed at business sites, but again, it looks like it's a very stable, very reliable site. There's been some good report. I haven't personally used this one, but it has been highly recommended. In this video, then, you have learnt what is web hosting and whether you even need it. You can go for those free sites. What to look out for when choosing your hosting account, and what are your requirements, as well as some recommended hosting. For more tips and training, come and visit http://philsolano.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video.